Hi, cutest dragon around.
No! Not you! Get me in. Blah. Blah. Okay, no more sending me chocolates right now. Between you guys and Mom finding me some Valentine's Day chocolates that were still available, I have too much. There's not even space for salads, so I don't have salads, but I have balsamic vinaigrette. I have a dressing, but not too much chocolate. So much chocolate! This time next month? Boka, why are you constantly going to do this again? You said one more dentist. Well, I got lots of cavities, see? How'd you do that, Boka? Yeah, I had a lot of chocolate, see? What do you mean? There's something cute. I can't do anything cute. I'm dangerous. So we're gonna react, and then we're gonna probably play some Warframe. Top of the morning to you. My name is Boka. Boka is cute. Go, go. Tragedy struck. Boka's voice went deeper and deeper.
Deeper and deeper. Now you have a male, Boka. Oh no! Where's my waifu?
No. Denied. Okay, it's not in fact cute. You know what? I'm rebranding to a male dragon. I'm unfemming your dragon. You're right. Get wrecked! No more fem dragon for you. I have to for the male dragon. Fuck you! Good afternoon, you red dragon. Not a red dragon! Hope you're well. Thank you. I am well. Hope you're well. You better be well. I'll stab you.
Boka Gaming. Boka the biggest gamer in the world. Or should I say the shortest?
I think we're gonna finish the Warhammer reacts. I'm gonna stab you, Lucy. Go Saha. Go Shabra. Habla.
But son, Sevatar, world upon world, all proud and brave in the face of conquerors, did not understand what was coming. The Night Lords, the Night Haunter. Upon entering the war zone, they wouldn't attack. The defenders' brave chants and boasting, rising like a crescendo until they realized the truth. Captives had been taken. Their screams of agony.
What's your opinion on changing to train sexual? Choo-choo, motherfucker.
Agony was broadcasted for weeks. The panicky, gossipy beast would start to dread the night, alone with the bone-chilling sounds. And then they came. Superhuman warriors, in midnight clad, covered in still warm blood, led by an enormous figure that invoked our primordial fears. You can imagine the absolute bone-rattling dread that would grip you. Looking at the sea of monsters approaching, the surrender always came quickly. World upon world fell to Konrad and the Eighth. So many had been spared death, but many of his brothers decried his way of war. Dawn tried to reason with him, telling him that the hatred planted in those that lived would pass on from generation to generation, until the worlds it would be engulfed in a war, that the cause of which none of those fighting will remember. It would never end. How could he not see that? But it didn't matter. Terror is the friend of compliance. So long as they were afraid, humanity would be compliant.
Edgy.
Take the universe and grind it down to the finest powder, and sieve it through the finest sieve. And then show me one atom of justice, one molecule of mercy. And yet, you act as if there is some ideal order in the world, as if there is some righteous in the universe by which it may be judged.
At times, in raptures of pain, I saw what was to occur laid out before me. In these waking dreams, I took countless lives with my bare hands. heads taken as trophies. I died again and again at the hands of my father, my sons butchered and maimed by their brothers. My name was to become synonymous with dread, but most vividly and most frequently, I saw my world pierced by a lance of purest light, splitting it, shattering
That Konrad? He looks interesting. Now, didn't look like a...
it into dust. It was self-sacrifice. Konrad Curze, the Night Haunter, was creating a just universe for the Imperium, following his fated path created by his father's design. He would do it all, hands soaked in blood. The Great Crusade progressed for decades. The mere mention of the 8th Legion would cower worlds into obedience. They knew the stories, the horrific monsters clad in dark armor, covered in flayed skin and skulls. How death was a mercy compared to what they would do. Many, such as Dawn, decried the use of his tactics, but others were just as incensed with Konrad's twisted sense of justice. His dislike for humanity was apparent in his conflict with Magnus the Red. In a joint compliance,
Wait. What did he say?
humanity was apparent in his conflict with Magnus the Red.
Oh, Magnus did not like him. Okay.
In a joint compliant action, Magnus sought to save the destroyed culture's libraries. The knowledge could be saved, used to aid the Imperium, but Konrad refused his brother's wishes, ordering a bombardment to destroy the last remnants of a defeated culture. What good did the knowledge of other worlds do for Nostromo? Learning of brighter places, civilizations with happy, compliant people. Knowledge for Magnus was freedom, a concept the Night Haunter hated. The
Alrighty then.
people did not need to be free. Their freedom led to choice, and choice led to crime.
Konrad is literally a totalitarian policeman.
Freedom challenged the Night Haunter's
He's like, how dare you be free? Triggered.
justice. Though he despised the Emperor, his father, he still believed in a just society of humanity. It was the interpretation of that which drew the ire of so many of his brothers. Take the universe and grind it down to the finest powder and sieve it through the finest sieve, and then show me one atom of justice, one molecule of mercy. And yet, you act as if there is some ideal order in the world, as if there is some righteousness in the universe by which it may be judged. Konrad had seen how effective, how transformative his justice worked on Nostromo, that depressing hellscape. To cower and control that vile population, he
really likes the word vile.
had learned that only an
Everything is vile to him. Think he takes his coffee vile?
absolute black and white system, something that disgusted his brother Vulcan, Primarch of the Salamanders.
Yeah. We... Definitely Konrad's my least favorite now. If the good boys hate you, then I hate you.
During a joint compliant action on the world known as Karastan, Vulcan and his salamanders fought alongside Konrad and his Night Lords. It was only up close that the horror of Konrad's philosophy was realized. During this campaign, Vulcan became disgusted with his brother, seeing the torture, the brutality, and disregard for human life, even witnessing the 8th slaughter the inhabitants of an entire city in order to seed fear amongst the general population. Vulcan, from his first moments, had never been alone.
Dragon boy! I see him. He's back there. He's back there.
He had a family. He was raised with love. He connected to the people of his homeworld. He understood the human experience, something Curze never had. His first interaction with humanity was violent. He saw the world through a criminal's brain. He never saw all the good inside the hearts of mankind. Vulcan confronted Curze about his legion's actions, and the two demigods clashed. Battered and wounded by each other, Vulcan swore he would inform Horus and Dawn of his brother's disgusting actions, a slight Konrad would never forget. Vulcan had not seen humanity like he had. His sense of justice was naive. After decades of warfare against numerous Xenos species and lost colonies of mankind, the 8th Legion had cut a bloody swath across the galaxy. But the cost of decades of warfare came full circle to the Legion. Absent of the Night Haunter, Nostromo began to fall into its old ways. A coup had been launched. The old, corrupt noble families, generations who had lived on a world devoid of the Night Haunter's presence, had overcome their fear. For decades, the bravest, brightest minds on Nostromo had been taken, inducted into their Dark King's Legion. With the regime change, the dregs and damned, the boys who were unredeemable, languishing in prisons, were offered up. Men who were mirrors of the very criminals the Night Haunter had hunted were now transformed. They were now in midnight clad. Fear was their weapon. But slowly the Legion began to rot, filled with legionaries who turned their weapons into sadistic delight, butchering and torturing for the enjoyment.
I feel like he would cause his own downfall because, like, slowly his soldiers wouldn't care about winning, they'd care about torturing. And there's a point where fear backfires. It makes you fight back even harder.
Something the Night Haunter would have to cleanse.
I'm not an apple. What's that?
Sevatar had never met the Raven Lord, only seen him from a distance, and he had never seen the Night Haunter and Korax side by side. It was said they were brothers, cast in the same mold, and truly the similarities between them were astonishing. Their skin shared death's pallor, their eyes were sinister orbs of ink.
Wait, are these two different people? Yeah, they are. This is the guys you said were the actual goth boys.
The Raven Lord's completely black. The Lord of Murder's barely less
Not
so.
you. My
Only a
friend
touch
Napple,
of
who is a
white
Napple who
either
was very
side of his
sassy on
enlarged
stream tonight.
pupils.
Okay.
Both carried talons of steel.
Sass.
Both evoked winged creatures of darkness. One, Chiroptian, the other Avian. Both were masters of the dark. Their facial features were markedly fraternal. Long, thin noses, narrow faces, high cheekbones, sharp chins, jet black hair. The differences were starker for the similarities. Curze was filthy and stank of blood. Korax was clean, his armor polished, but it was their expressions that they diverged the most. Corvus Korax bore a perpetual light frown, an expression of such utmost seriousness it strayed into caricature.
Yes, there are
Curze's
two
face
goth boys.
changed
Angry
constantly,
Bat Boy and Sad
small
Crow Boy.
ticks,
Not to
transforming it
confuse
from
with Pretty
arch
Vampire
knowingness
Boy.
to wild-eyed threat. Signs of the incipient madness that, even then,
So much edge in one room they could cut the air with a knife.
Sevatar was becoming aware of. The possibility of violence turned the air to glass, which any sudden movement might shatter. Two lords of men, one midnight clad, the other armored in shadow, stared at one another. Distant rumbling sent dying tremors through the building. As the bombardment moved on to the other districts, Korax broke the silence first.
What is the meaning of this, my brother?
He said, gesturing meter-long claws at the mess of the slain.
What happened to your warriors?
Unable to help himself, the Night Haunter snarled. He caught it and turned it into a mocking smile, but not before all present had seen his anger. He was a predator challenged by something just as dangerous. For a moment, Konrad Curze exhibited weakness.
I happened to them,
said Curze evenly. Korax looked over the ruined flesh in the room in disbelief.
What have you done?
Curze smiled blackly.
An internal dispute, Lord Korax.
He said airily.
A legion matter that I have resolved. You must understand there are many criminals in your legion also. You have your ways of dealing with those who stray too far from the bounds of good conduct.
He poked a blade of mercy through the shattered eye lens of a helm and held it up for Korax to see.
This is mine.
Korax's eyes lingered on the blood staining Curze's chin.
Then perhaps you could tell me why you are bombarding this already compliant sector.
This Raven Lord has fought most of his brothers. Let our Lord teach him a lesson.
For Vox Sevatar.
I say we fight.
Do not open fire!
Sevatar ordered. The muted clicks on the Raven's Voxes intruded on their frequency, a sure sign the Ravens were also communing with each other. From their stance, he guessed their conversation was going the same way. Curze shifted his weight imperceptibly. Korax reacted in kind. His fingers twitched a fraction of a millimeter. The pair of them appeared at ease, but they were a hair's breadth away from striking.
So much edge and so much, like... Wait, what's the other word? So much muted animosity. Any more edge in this room, and it'll be cut in half. Cut in half!
Curze, thought Sevatar. Don't fight him. Curze narrowed his eyes, crinkled with a smile. A little tension bled from the room.
We are the weapon of fear no other legion dared to be. We are the glorious 8th. You think I am a monster? I am a simple tool, like you. We have different uses, though identical edges.
He's like, I'm as edgy as you. I just go further into the darkness.
Edgy Bat Boy and Sad Crow Boy. Konrad listened to Lincoln Part 1 and was like, this will be my whole personality,
said Korax. Curze shrugged.
You may join the line of all the others who feel the same. I don't care. I am exactly as the Emperor intended me to be. Are you really any better than I, Korax Shadow Skulker? The 19th are assassins. We are all killers. We are brothers in methods as well as in blood.
Our way is clean,
said Korax. Sevatar found his voice annoyingly lugubrious. Such misery. They said he was raised in a prison, and that accounted for his saturnine demeanor. Sevatar wanted to hurl him into the deeps of Nostromo's hives, so he might better learn what lawlessness was. Self-obsessed, unable to see the truth.
Wait, so did Raven Boy also grow up in a prison? Is that what I'm supposed to take away from this? Or did I hear that wrong? I like how I'm like leaning into the screen. I need to fix that somehow. There we go. Fix it. Alright. But yeah. So he's like, so this guy was also in prison? No, wait. This guy wasn't ever in prison, right? He was just basically a murderer throughout his entire thing. And then this guy, for some reason, was in a jail for a while?
Truth for their own aggrandized woes. Curze was lonely in being true to himself. He was a fiend, but at least he was honest.
No war is clean. All of them come with a price.
Curze continued.
Some are more obvious than others, that is all, and the price must always be paid.
Curze sighed, shrinking into himself, bored.
War's reckoning awaits you. Do you wish to know the cost?
Korax's black, unreadable eyes rested on Curze for several seconds.
I will return to my ship. Stop this bombardment. The conquest is falling behind schedule. We risk turning the population further from the Emperor's light.
I think you'll find them most pliable when I am done.
Yeah, I think so.
Said Curze.
Korax grew up on a
My
prison
Lord
planet.
Curze.
A sad little
Sevatar said
moon.
stiffly.
But he grew up on a prison planet, so he literally was born. Well, not born, but like his entire life was basically in prison. Okay. Interesting that they grew up opposite ways.
And severed the Vonks.
My Lord Night Haunter, what are your orders?
Sevatar asked the question as neutrally as he could, belying his concern that the answer might result in a command to
Hi,
hunt down their allies.
Bokathedragon.
Let them go.
Said Curze sadly.
Now is not the time for us to kill our brethren.
Hi. Look, guys. It's that thing that they keep mentioning.
Droll thing life is. That mysterious arrangement of merciless logic for a futile purpose. The most you can hope from it is some knowledge of yourself. That comes too late. A crop of inextinguishable regrets. But his soul was mad. Being alone in the wilderness, it had looked within itself. And, by heavens I tell you, it had gone mad.
He hated him, his mirror, his brother, the Raven Lord, Corvus Corax. Both of them had grown up on worlds overrun by criminals. Both had that innate sense of justice bound into their very DNA. Both creatures of night and shadow. Two men cast from the same die. But Konrad hated him. Hated how Corax was lauded and accepted. The Raven Lord had incinerated a world in his rise to the role of Primarch. Millions dead, but yet he was chastised for torturing thousands.
I feel like it's the execution that they don't like. I feel like, yeah, he killed a lot of people, but
Wagon.
Wagon. I feel like, yeah, he killed a lot of people, but those people aren't there to, like, complain about it. Whereas the people that were tortured are, like, living reminders that you're a torturer. So everyone's constantly reminded it, oh, you're not a good person.
Yeah, blowing up a planet versus personally ripping everyone's skin off.
I feel like the
Wagon.
one's one and done. The other is constantly done over and over for a long time.
Why did his father,
feel like
the
that-
Emperor of Mankind, not give him a path like the Raven Lords? The journey Konrad was following filled him with resentment, because after a near century of constant warfare, the cracks were beginning to show. His soul was mad. Being alone in the wilderness, it had looked within itself, and by heavens, I tell you, it had gone mad. Alone, in the shaping of his moral compass, devoid of human love, the superhuman demigod Konrad Curze, for all his elevation above the mortal man, he was still human. And no person who had murdered, tortured and genocided as many as he had, could still retain sanity. He had become the Night Haunter, a figure of black and white justice, who hurt the few to save the many, but a small part in the back of his mind was cursed with doubt. It was all piling up. The degradation of the Legion, its perverse new recruits, the re-emergence of crime on Nostramo, his desensitized veterans, and the visions. He still saw his own death. He still saw death and destruction. A time when Legionary and brother would kill each other. Even a time when he had a particularly violent vision where he saw the future monstrosity he was destined to become. Squirming and lashing out. Screaming in pain. Horrified.
So this guy could see the future, right? Curze could? Or something like that? Basically, he saw his future at least. I'm a little curious, like... He basically just was like, okay, I'll keep going towards that future.
By his future, he awoke out of his trance, and he realized he had murdered one of his archivists. He had killed his first innocent person. Someone who he had no evidence of crimes for. There was no justice in his death. He was a criminal now. Perhaps he really did deserve the fate he was due. He was falling. Even his closest sons, Shang and Sevitar, could see it. He was vulnerable, and turned to the one person he felt he could confide in. Fulgrim, the brother who had guided him. The only brother who had looked him in the eye on the day they had met. Perhaps his only friend. It was a defiance of destiny. Perhaps if he told his brother, then he was free from the future he saw. Maybe he wasn't to become the disheveled monster he had seen when he was a boy. But he was betrayed. Fulgrim had told Dawn everything. His confidence, his secrecy, his vulnerability was betrayed. We all know the confusion, pain, and hate caused when the person we trusted turns their back on us. Dawn chastised Konrad. How dare he speak of betrayals against the Emperor? In the mass of judgment and anger, Konrad was struck by another horrifying vision. Pain shot all over his body as images of a future of fire and blood ravaged his mind. He became a wild beast and began lashing out. The raving Konrad launched himself at Dawn, beating the surprised Primarch to a pulp, butchering several of his Imperial fists too. Shame and regret crept back into the devolving mind of Konrad as the vision ceased and the Lord of the Eighth fled, anguish turning in his chest from the betrayal of Fulgrim and for what he had done. Returning to the 8th Legion, Konrad was sick of it all. He had come to his brother to confide in him about the future and his Legion, but he was met with betrayal. His Legion was becoming corrupt, straying further and further from the ideals and teachings he had ingrained in them. That accursed world, Nostromo. He hated everything about it, and now it was corrupting his philosophy, his justification of all the deeds he had done. It needed to be stopped. Konrad assembled the entire Night Lord's fleet. Arriving in the Ultima Segmentum, the shadow of an entire legion loomed over the dark world of Nostromo. A legion full of warriors.
Kind of saw this coming. He's anti-Batman from basically dark Gotham. Anti-Batman would absolutely destroy dark Gotham.
Warriors looked at the place of their birth, the world they had grown up on, the place where their families lived, where their culture thrived, and then they burned it. Konrad ordered lancing strikes deep into the core of the planet, breaking it apart. Millions of screams lost into the void of space. Those that had resisted their orders were butchered by Konrad's ever-loyal son, Sevitar, until the weakness was cold. Was it justice or vengeance? That code forged in the dark, killing the few to save the many. But where was that? Did all Nostromans deserve to die? Even those who had done no crimes? No. It was all corrupt. It had to be. Or what he had done, or what he had just done, was a crime. Condemnation poured in from the throne of terror. For decades a sentiment had mounted. Forces refused to fight with the 8th. For decades, brother legions had begun to be openly hostile, and then the word came. The Emperor was recalling the 8th back to Terra to face judgment. After all they had sacrificed, they had become the monsters to save lives. For over a century, the Emperor had known their way of war, not afraid to utilize his Terra unit when the hint of rebellion came, condemning Konrad from enacting justice on that corrupted homeworld. He had made Konrad and them this way.
I think this is basically just Konrad going crazy. This is like the early moments of gone craziness.
Only to act so above it. Konrad and the 8th were angry, disillusioned, and it was at the height of this discontent that Horus arrived. I have seen darkness, witnessed it in my dreams. I am standing at the edge of a chasm. There is no escaping it. I know my fate, for it is the future, and nothing can prevent it coming to pass. So I step off and welcome the dark. The visions were coming true. The time for brother and legionary to kill each other had come. Horus Lupercal, favored son of the Emperor, had been corrupted by foul entities of the warp. Dark gods, created from the negative emotions of sentient life. Horus came to Konrad, whispering sweet words, designed to target the ego and anger the 8th was feeling. Something Konrad knew was unnecessary. He had seen his betrayal of the Emperor. His prescience had shown him. He had no choice but to join the rebellion. It was destined. Upon the world of Isfahan 5, brothers clash in a battle so violent that to bear witness to the cacophony of death would destroy your sanity. The Salamanders, Iron Hands, and Raven Guard, retreating to their allied lines, wounded and beaten, hailed for their reinforcements, but a cold, eerie silence met them. And then the tension was finally broken. The Word-Bearers, Alpha Legion, Iron Warriors, and Night Lords open-fired. Konrad and his sons tore into their fellow Astartes, ripping them apart. Amongst the heat, smoke, and blood, Konrad was slaughtering the loyalist warriors of the Emperor.
I'm just trying to figure out how he would view himself now. It's like he basically just like committed absolute, like, not justice.
To witness his speed and prowess was like death itself, reaping souls. His sons around him screaming the battle cry that had originated from his favorite son, Sevatar. Death to the false emperor. It was then that Konrad found them, his brothers. Seeing Lorgar, that weakling priest, impaled on the claws of the ones he hated most, and he chose to intervene. Two black, pitless eyes met each other. The two brothers, cast from the very same die, locked their power claws together. It must have felt good to see the one who had looked down upon him shattered and wounded, confused by the betrayal. The Raven Lord, Corvus Corax. Wounded and deep in enemy lines, the Raven Lord made his choice and retreated, a decision that would haunt him forever. The battle had turned into a massacre, one of the greatest defeats the Imperium would ever know, but the sensation of victory was slightly tainted. Amidst the violence and betrayal, the 8th Legion had seen something unnerving. They had seen how some of the Word-Bearers had transformed into nightmarish creatures, and Lorgar Aurelian wreathed in a vile psychic flame. There was something unclean about them. Konrad, Sevatar, and the Night Lords were beginning to see that there was more to this rebellion.
Oh, now you realize you're part of the demons.
Konrad's disgust at his brother and fellow conspirators was quickly overshadowed by an invaluable prize. Vulcan, the Primarch of the Salamanders, unconscious. The brother who had condemned him decades ago during the Great Crusade found himself strapped to the torturer's table. The sight of Konrad to Vulcan filled him with disgust. The disheveled mess that was his brother looked awful. He was filthy, covered in dried.
Yet he would ignore it to get back at one person that basically said, "You're unsavable."
Blood. He was prone to twitching and muttering to himself. His features appeared even more gaunt. Was he speaking to Konrad or the Night Haunter? Konrad began to brutally torture his brother, occasionally hearing whispers in his head, at times succumbing to more violent visions in between decimating his...
This is one of the brothers that didn't even get chosen by a... a chaos god, right? Isn't he like one of the ones that wasn't?
Brother's form. Konrad had been created a monster. His father had made them all like this. If only the oh-so-proud Vulcan would admit it. If Vulcan had been in his place, he would have done all the same vile acts he was condemning him for. Konrad's horrific torture of Vulcan ramped up. Physical and psychological pain that even a Primarch couldn't endure, placing him in situations where he was forced to take innocent life against his will. Were these people even criminals? Konrad's mental state was declining. He would twist in...
Yeah, he was basically going further and further crazy. Okay.
Scenarios where empathy and kindness was shown into unwinnable death games. Perhaps his soul was mad. Vulcan was the most human of all their brothers. He represented all the goodness in humanity. Something that, if acknowledged by Curze, would call into question his horrific acts. Because then he killed people. Not the panicky criminal beasts he made them out to be. And Vulcan had to turn, had to show his true nature, that he was a monster deep down. Because if he
which Dragon Daddy will never do.
Wasn't, then Curze had chosen to be one. His mind was devolving further, his frustration fueling the degradation, until finally he snapped, killing his brother in rage. But to his horror, Vulcan began to regenerate. Vulcan lived. Konrad's sanity snapped. Unable to deliver death, the punishment in his form of justice, it made him scream, combined with the fact that his father had gifted Vulcan with immortality, whilst he had been born a monster. Konrad began to kill Vulcan again and again. Was it justice, vengeance, or anger? It was lost in the maelstrom of madness. After months of mind-numbingly brutal treatment, Vulcan escaped, beating Konrad into an inch of his life, and then worst of all, sparing him, giving the monster his pity. The crumbled, broken mess that was
that would possibly completely destroy Konrad's mentality completely. If there was any left.
Konrad did not have long to wallow in his haze. The War Master Horus had ordered the 8th Legion to the eastern fringes.
Lord,
he asked after several minutes of silence had gone by.
Speak, Sev.
Why do you hate us?
He asked it quietly, carefully, with no hint of offense or malice. The words still stopped Curze in his tracks, causing him to turn. The long blades curving from each of the Primarch's knuckles reflected the golden light of the Emperor's halo. Several streets away.
What?
Sevitar spoke just as casually as before.
Why are you the only Primarch to hate his Legion? What have we done to you?
Curze smiled, barely.
I spoke with Angron and Lorgar not long ago. They told me of their purges, cleansing the untrustworthy elements from the 12th and 17th. I laughed when they said it, at the sheer absurdity of the idea. They knew exactly when to stop the killing of the weak, the treacherous, and the corrupt within their bloodlines. I wouldn't even know where to begin culling mine.
Sevitar snorted in dismissal.
On any other day, such words might hurt my feelings.
Look around you.
Curze said.
You were born on this world. You grew to adulthood here just as I did. The Emperor praised me for my rule over this world. Even Fulgrim admired it. A model of compliance. An obedient world, they said. Were my people happy? Did that even matter? I made these people human despite their feral drives. I made them civilized despite their baser instincts. I raised them above the level of beasts. That was my responsibility to them as a superior being, and I fulfilled it.
Curze looked to the grey spires, rising in every direction, and the frozen smog from the foundries and manufactorums, veiling the spire tops in a haze of pollutant smoke.
And see how my people rewarded me. I was gone only a handful of years before everything soured. My own homeworld poisoned my legion with recruits who were worthless as soldiers.
That is probably the thing that probably tipped him over the edge into evil territory. Is literally, he left his planet for just a few years. He was getting the brightest and strongest of his generation. And then his world started just giving him the criminals. And like the dregs of his world. He went from getting the top 1% to getting the bottom 10%.
Violators.
Probably, yeah, bottom 10%.
Murderers. Thieves. The scum. The dregs. The detritus.
Sevatar almost laughed.
Sire, you are no different. The Legion is disorderly and vile because it's cast in your image.
No.
Curze drenched the single syllable in regret.
No, you don't understand. I've never claimed to be perfect, Sevatar, but I became the sinner, the monster, the night haunter, so my people would never have to. And look at the result. Look at the recruits from Nostramo, less than a decade after I departed. Look at the filth they sent me. Look at the disgusting dregs of humanity my own apothecaries infused with my genetic material and reforged into transhumans. The 8th is poisoned, Sev. Generations of men who are murderers in my image, yet devoid of my conviction. They are killers and abusers because they want to be, not because someone had to be.
The end result is the same,
said Sevatar.
Fear is the weapon.
Fear is supposed to be the means to the end. Look at the bloodshed my legion has wrought these last years. Even before the crusade was done, fear became the end itself. It was all they desired. They fed on it. My sons were strong, so they bled the weak for their own amusement. Tell me, Captain, where the nobility is in that.
Where is the nobility in any of this?
Sevatar gestured to the streets of Nostromo Quintus around them.
You can claim a savage nobility, father, but this is far more savage than noble.
Curze's pale lips peeled back from his filed teeth.
There was no other way.
No?
Sevatar answered his father's snarl with a grin.
What other ways did you try?
Sevatar.
Answer me, father. What politics of peace did you teach? What scientific and social illumination did you bring?
Why is this? I gotta say, this,
There is a similar line in my own lore from Draconis.
This is... I like the... This Legionnaire is possibly smarter and a better Primarch than his own Primarch.
To this society. In your quest for a human utopia, what other ways did you try beyond eating the flesh of stray dogs and skinning people alive?
It was the only way.
And Konrad's only explanation is, there was no other way. And he never tried any other way.
Sevatar laughed again.
The only way to do what? The only way to bring a population to heel? How then did the other Primarchs manage it? How
Basically getting slapped with facts.
has world upon world managed it, with resorting to butchering children and broadcasting their screams across the
Konrad
planet through
just
Voxnets?
I feel like Conrad's like he has the weakest reason to become a bad guy. Besides Taurus, so far that I know. He literally grew up murdering because he thought that was necessary. And then when given another option, he was like, no, that's not an option. So, like, he's basically just evil. Like, yeah, him growing up on a bad planet was bad for him, but like, he was given, like, at least 3 chances to basically say, like, turn it around. And each time he was like, no. He's basically companies in this day and age. He sees the right answer and looks away and it's like, no, everyone else is wrong. I'm totally the right one.
Their worlds were never as serene as mine was.
And the serenity of yours died the first second your back was turned. So tell me again how you succeeded. Tell me again how this all worked perfectly.
Curze was on him in the time it took to blink. The Primarch's hand wrapped around his throat, lifting him from the ground, stealing his breath.
You overstep your bounds, First Captain.
How can you lie to me like this?
He's not even afraid of him. Make this guy the Primarch. He's like, go ahead.
Sevatar's voice was a strangled growl.
How can you lie to yourself? I stand here inside your mind, witnessing a theater of your own memories. Your way is the 8th Legion way now, but it has never been the only way. Just the easiest way.
Curze tightened his grip. Sevatar narrowed his eyes, his last breath escaping as Curze squeezed.
You enjoyed this way?
The captain hissed.
You came to love it, just as we all did. The power, the righteousness.
Curze released him. Sevatar crashed to the ground, his armor joints snarling as his ceramite scraped the rockcrete.
Son of a...
He trailed off, catching his breath.
The son of a god.
Curze said softly.
Get up, Sevatar. Leave me be.
The first captain rose to his feet, his vision blurred.
I'm going nowhere, sire. Not without you.
Curze smiled. His son could see that much, at least.
Like, I think it's hilarious that they put Konrad in the blue. In the I like how I'm even calling him a Primarch, because he exhibits all the, like, unfalteringness that I've come to expect from most of the other Primarchs.
I admire your tenacity, I always have. But you are a shadow of what I am, Sevatar. You cannot match me. Go.
Sevatar filled his lungs, the sterile air viciously cold as he drew it in. He hated them, his so-called sons. He had taken his philosophy of justice, crafted from his interpretation of a serene society, cloaked by an Nostraman worldview, and spread it to his legion. They had become torture.
So, but you're telling me Sanguinius is nothing but good? Like, he always chooses the right path, and he always picks the correct option.
Icons of fear and terror, bringing justice to those who deserved it, and to create a human utopia, a very quiet and serene future, where the little humans stayed in line. It was the way the Emperor had made him, but his legion no longer killed
I'm surprised Sanguinius wasn't like one of the top voted then last.
for justice. They were simply enjoying it. After the escape of Vulcan,
I'm actually excited to eventually get to Sanguinius.
Konrad and the Night Lords headed to the eastern fringes, set to engage Lionel Johnson and his Dark Angels. A strategy to delay the First Legion and allow Horus to strike at Terra. Konrad and
Wait, I thought Horus was the first legion. Wait, who's the first legion? Is Horus the second or third legion?
the 8th launched themselves at world upon
No, wait.
on world, cutting a swath across various worlds of the newly forged Imperium. Populations of billions would find their
Basically, Sanguinius was a healing aura for everyone.
skies darkened
That's
by supposed allies, only to realize the horror when warriors in midnight clad started butchering them. Konrad, fulfilling the path he had seen in his prescience, slaughtered and killed without restraint, witnessing his so-called sons enjoy the slaughter and torture, but he did nothing. He saw no path where fate made him intervene. He just watched and judged. Even when he would snap and kill innocents, it was different for him. He justified it. Any who had died were destined to do so. His father had made him this way. His father had crafted his fate, so it was his fault. Their blood was on his hands. But the slaughter was not unchallenged. The Lion and the Dark Angels for years chased the 8th Legion. Hundreds of battles were fought in the ashes of ruined worlds, as legionaries butchered each other. The Thramos Crusade was raging across the eastern
he looks cool. So is this the other?
fringes for years, until Konrad finally
The other
bade
bad
the Lion
Primarchs
to
besides Konrad are Daddy's favorite son, Angry Demon Boy, Smug Snake Boy, Stinky Bug Boy, Cringe Church Boy, Metal Jealous Boy, Funny Wizard, and those two guys in a trench coat.
Two guys in a
face to face on the barren world of Desolga. Descending down to the surface with just an honor guard, the two Primarchs met face to face. To see the two superhumans side by side was incredible. One the chiseled face of Terran perfection, the other a gaunt, dark king, both intimidating, but yet awe-inspiring. The sight of Curze shocked the Lion. His appearance reflected the heart within. A disheveled, pale, gaunt man stared back at the Lion, showing a murderous smile with filed teeth. The brothers spoke, Curze attempting to convince the Lion of the truth, that their father was a liar, a manipulator, that this rebellion had revealed his hypocrisy, that horrors had shown him the secrets of the warp. But he did this in vain. He had seen that he would not sway his brother. A genuine sadness emerged from underneath his mad features, a tragic glimpse of the person, of Konrad the man behind the Night Haunter. Only Konrad and the Lion had grown up alone, devoid of the warmth of human connection. They alone understood
I kind of like the Lion. I like the aesthetic of, like, basically they are Templar Knights.
what it was like to see the galaxy unfiltered. At the onset of
So far, I've only really liked one evil faction, and that was Angron.
the Great Crusade, Curze had been the Dark King, the cruel Primarch in midnight clad, who cowed the enemies of the Imperium. A man who held so strict to his code that he knew when to stop. But the creature before the Lion was nothing like that. Perhaps never noble, but once sane. The Lion apologized to Konrad, and then stabbed him in the gut. A vicious duel broke out, reigniting the conflict. Brother versus brother, legionary versus legionary. For years the conflict continued, until Konrad and the 8th found themselves caught in a Dark Angel's ambush. Konrad was captured after a brutal duel with the Lion. Wounded and defeated, Konrad awoke upon the Dark Angel's flagship, restrained like a wild animal. But no cage could truly hold a Primarch for long. Konrad was locked within a comatose state, until he was reunited with his favored son, and First Captain Sevatar. Utilizing his emerging psychic powers, Sevatar entered his Gene Father's broken mind, baiting him with the unspoken truth, designed to reawaken his lord. Why? Why did he hate his sons so much? They were his creation. His philosophy of justice was a joke. The minute the Night Haunter was gone, humanity overcame their fear. More lived through his methods, but the Night Haunter's peace was a joke. He was just like the sons he detested so much. He enjoyed...
That's what I feel like the problem with fear is. Fear has 3 different weaknesses. One, the second it's gone, it will be overcome. The second it's too much, it will be overcome. And some are just immune to it. Like, some don't give a damn on the consequences.
The killing,
they don't look at the end result of fear. They just ignore it altogether.
Torture, the brutality, the tearing down of his father's kingdom. That was the truth behind all his madness. The reason he enjoyed all the evil he had done, and the hate he had for this cruel universe, was because he hated himself.
Well, technically 4 weaknesses, because, like, there's a famous president once said, the only thing to fear is fear itself. Like, fear can be fought with fear, like, and whoever's got the weakest, like, determination loses in that case.
He hated himself because he enjoyed it. He enjoyed it all. The words...
Like, eventually one side will fear the other side winning, and that fear itself will take over.
Reached into Konrad, awakening the mad mind back into reality.
Basically, Dragon.
And almost costing Sevatar his life. Even with all the hypocrisy and dressing down of his Primarch, Konrad's son was still loyal, perhaps both a traitor and a fool. Darting off into the bowels of the Dark Angel ship, once again Konrad became the figure of terror in the shadows, hunting the Dark Angel just like he had stalked the population on Nostromo. But it would all change soon. Sailing to the only beacon of hope, the Dark Angels arrived above Macragge.
Macragge. Isn't Macragge one of the, fear tactics?
You know I hate, detest, and can't bear a lie. Not because I am straighter than the rest of us, but simply because it appalls me. There is a taint of death, a flavor of mortality in lies, which is exactly what I hate and detest in the world.
And the Ultramarines
is the Ultramarine home world.
Yeah, and the Ultramarines would basically be the, like, one of the factions that would not lose to Konrad, because all of them are basically, we don't fear fear.
What I want to forget.
You are repugnant,
said Sanguinius.
So pretty. So stupid. Father's favored cockerel preening in the hen coop. Is monstrousness not rather the point of me?
Curze replied bitterly.
Tell me, brother, I am curious. Are you one of the ones who believe our scattering was chance, or one of the ones who do not? I think Gilliman is in the latter camp. I can see the thought ticking around that tedious track of a mind he has, like a rodent in a maze, desperate to find a different way out, but knowing there is only one exit, and a feline waits without. Tick, tick, tick.
He cackled, raking his talons slowly through the air.
Claws on the walls.
You came to ask me this? You are insane.
I came.
Curze shrugged.
I am asking it. Does my purpose matter? Come, Angel, do you really think it was a chance? I want to know. Each one of us was cast away upon a world that turned out to suit our characteristics perfectly. Characters our father engineered. Furthermore, the characters of many of our Legion's Terran sons were also matched with those of the worlds we were found upon. And, oh yes, we can both see the future. I rather suspect, therefore, that father can read it like a periodical. Can you stand there and tell me that it was chance? No? No reply?
Yet there's a... The only reason I wouldn't doubt that it was... Like... Wasn't my father's doing if I was a Primarch is literally because there's a literal demon god that literally is the chaos god. Like, if there's a chaos god of any kind that exists, I would be like, he would enjoy breaking futures, messing up with someone that can see the future.
No,
said Sanguinius quietly.
No reply, or no as in, no, you don't believe it?
Goaded Curze. Sanguinius' sword lowered a fraction. Why he confided in Curze he could not discern, but the words were out, and he could not have stopped them, even had that been his desire.
No, I do not believe our losing was chance.
Yes, you see!
Curze became excited by Sanguinius' agreement.
A man who plans so long and hard.
But I also see, like, even if he knew about it, I would totally see him being like, well, they're going to the exact places that benefit them the most. Because he's such a calculated person, he'd be like, why wouldn't I let that happen?
To be taken in so at the moment of triumph.
Although I feel like he would, if he really knew, he would have interfered with some of them.
Nonsense. Congratulations. You are halfway to the truth.
That our father was a liar?
Was.
Curze said with a smile, his brow furrowing for just a fraction of a second.
Indeed. A liar, and more. For I am a monster because that is all I can be, and you are an angel likewise.
You had a choice, Curze. Father only made us. He did not shape us.
Curze's eagerness turned into
That's my exact answer right there. Father only made you. He didn't decide, like, everything else. I think the Emperor is supposed to be like a interpretation of God with humans, and
also Cruz resents Sanguinius, because Sanguinius is an actual vampire, but Cruz just dresses up like one.
That too, but I think the reason being is, like, the Emperor completely let them decide themselves. He wanted to see what they chose.
Denial.
I was made to be thus.
He wasn't made. You were made to be a monster. You chose to be a monster.
Nothing could change it.
Like, well, yeah, they are each an aspect, but I think he completely... They are made in his image. Like, if you interpret this all... Like, basically, if you take that, he's the aspect of Emperor's coolness. Yeah, but that's the thing. They're all made in his image. Same thing with God and humans. Kind of. And he let them decide their fates. Decide their own fates. So basically, Sanguinius is his hope and his, like, his kindness and his greatness, basically. Konrad is basically his vileness, his cruelness, and his, I guess, tragedy?
No, because I tried. I did.
Curze's eyes
But you didn't try.
gleamed with tears.
For what? So that he might see me suffer as I failed. That he might tick off his observations upon his laboratory Thorium chart. What kind of father makes a child to be one way, then castigates him for being so? You think me cruel. He is crueler. I was to be sanctioned for doing what I was made to do.
He clashed his teeth, suddenly vicious.
How is that fair? How can I follow the man who did this to me?
As quickly as a wave is spent, his ire subsided, and his brittle, agreeable manner returned.
So you see, he deserved betrayal.
That I do not believe, Konrad. Fathers lie to their sons to protect them, to save them. Our father hid himself for untold millennia among mankind, revealing himself only when he deemed the time right. The story of our scattering was a necessary lie, if indeed it is a lie. The difference between you and me is that you see sinister purpose behind his actions. I do not. His secrecy hurt me, Konrad, as much as it hurts you. And the conclusion you have reached hurts me also. But I will not cast myself into despair. That is the true difference between you and me. I will not abandon our father's dream. His plan is for the good of mankind.
Curze stiffened. When not threatening violence, there was something pathetic about him.
You smell nice today,
Good
Boka.
given to a species singularly lacking in goodness. Did you know that here at the heart of Gilliman's perfect little paradise, there are those that are not cared for? I have been hiding in the Illyrian quarters. Rebute's vaulted civil codes wrap themselves around the edges of such places tight as walls, but do not penetrate its wards.
The Night Haunter approached his brother. Sanguinius matched him step for step, keeping the distance between them. Curze dragged Askelion around like a morose child might carelessly drag a toy, unaware of the damage being inflicted to the thing it cared for, as it fulminated on
Weird
some
is only a
meaningless
matter of
slight.
perspective.
To have
Embrace
been
compliment.
there, among the outsiders, the unvalued. They speak of me in whispers. They have learned to fear the dark. But has our brother found me? Has the lion thought to look there or anywhere on Macragge? No. Idiocy. I practically shouted to them to come for me. If you would look at this world and see the hope of the future, go to the poor quarters. There you will see the despair of the present. And you know as well as I, hope for the future is a lie. Everything goes back to the beginning. And our beginning is so very dark.
Is that what you believe, brother? That all this was inevitable?
All this wasn't inevitable. He is interesting. Yes. We will finish this up tomorrow. Okay. Alright, we're gonna do the rest of our Konrad reacts. We are goddamn what? That's right! Good deal. Ginger dragon. Put some ginger in your spice. Let's get our react on. Too early, rar. Get wreck scrub. Get wreck scrub. Let's go. Let's do
I
this!
believe Horus's turning was part of our father's intended plan.
I do not think so.
Curze threw up his arms, as if he would embrace his brother. Askelion's boot clanked on the floor as he dropped it.
See, what a marvelous heart-to-heart we are having. Why should we not? Our brothers have close relationships. Fulgrim regarded Ferris very highly before he killed him. And then Ferris was also close to Vulcan. So easy to dislike Ferris, but so much loved by others. Perhaps there is some hope for me.
There is hope for us all, Konrad.
Curze smirked.
No, there isn't. I am hated. You have always hated me.
No, duh! You make it so easy! Don't even try to be like.
You know I hate, detest, and cannot bear a lie. Not because I am straighter than the rest of us, but simply because it appalls me. There is a taint of death, a flavor of mortality in lies. Descending down the road to madness, Konrad hated what he was becoming. The monster he had seen in his visions on Nostromo. It was...
Like, in retrospect, I see why a lot of people wanted this particular video. Like is not, like it or not, like, some of the more in-depth stuff. You kind of have to see the in-depth stuff to understand how, like, twisted Konrad is.
all his father's fault. This fate, hiding in the cold, damp bowels of the...
And the voice acting is amazing.
Dark Angel's flagship. A trail of bodies were left in the Night Haunter's wake. Any sent to capture him were left mangled, tortured.
Congratulations,
Things. Some even with bite marks from when the Primarch had become hungry. Escaping from the lion's clutches, Konrad roared down to the surface of Macragge, finding himself at the heart of a new empire, Imperium Secundus. The innocent people of Guilliman's homeworld found this enormous shadow loom over them, like death itself. Was it a man or a beast? The Night Haunter began to butcher the screaming, terrified people, finding himself confronted by both Rabute Guilliman and Lionel Johnson. He fought them both with all the grace of insanity itself, pushing the two demigod figures to their limit. Even amongst the Primarchs, Konrad's prowess made him one of the best duelists, and his blinding speed and tenacity forced the Lion to protect the death blows aimed at Guilliman, the weakest amongst them. Detonating the explosives he had rigged around the chapel, Curze escaped, while Guilliman and the Lion only survived thanks to Barbarous Dantiog, teleporting them away. Seemingly unchallenged, Konrad dove deeper into the heart of Guilliman's realm, finding Guilliman's adoptive mother, Tarasha Uten. The elderly matron stood up, and under the sheer weight of the Primarch's aura, his silhouette of dread and terror, she looked the monster in the eye.
Damn. Even his mother is, like, amazing.
And told the bastard to go to hell. For a man who had reveled in being an icon of fear.
She don't fear him one bit.
His weapon in cowering humanity. The act only in his dark moments he would admit to loving. The fearless...
I thought you had a house, Kong Kong.
...of this mere human standing up to him must have filled him with rage. But before he could end the pathetic thing, an enormous man, covered in rudimentary armor, with obsidian skin and scarlet eyes, barreled into him. Vulcan lived. Confusion, rage, paranoia, and hate flooded into Curze as the two Primarchs began to duel. Each death blow Curze gave his opponent, he would simply reawaken from. That accursed immortality. The brothers
Boka is
mercilessly
cutest
attacked
dragon
each
ever, I
other,
swear
but
it
the
to be
duel
true.
was
No, shut up!
interrupted by the Cabal assassin, John Grammaticus, and his comrade, Damon Pytanius. Using a mysterious entity, Konrad was banished, and the Primarch found himself in the warp. The debilitating, insane Primarch was cast into that realm of madness, and there he saw the truth of things that their father had kept from them. He saw his father's empire of lies. Konrad bore witness to the future of unending war. His father crippled on a throne of gold, a carrion god, ruling an imperium built on hate, superstition and war. Emerging back into real space, Konrad found himself again back on Macragge.
He got teleported. He got banished from Macragge to reappear in Macragge. That's funny.
Cacophony of justification added to his personal outlook. Infiltrating his way back into the heart of Imperium Secundus' realm, Konrad ambushed his brother Sanguinius, now the Emperor Regent, keeping a hostage in case he decided to get too brave. Konrad began to taunt his brother. Their father had lied to them, that all of what they had endured, even this rebellion, was part of his plan. a sinister plot to achieve his selfish goal of apotheosis. But the truth...
Like, doesn't Konrad understand how stupid he is? He saw the future, and his father is literally a carrion god. Not the best, most fun thing to be. You don't even understand that. Like, are we sure Konrad doesn't also have the Emperor's stupidity?
Was buried in his work.
Because it would explain a lot.
But I am hated. You have always hated me. And he did not deserve it. How could you hate someone who had no agency in their life? No choice. His father had made him this broken monster. He had implanted his sense of justice. He had allowed him to weaponize it for the Imperium for over a century. And his reward for all of this was condemnation.
What do you mean?
And then death at the hands of an assassin. He didn't want to be hated. Why? Why couldn't he be in his brother's place? Couldn't he be there in golden glory? And Sanguinius the rotten mad thing instead? Why did he have to be alone while his brothers were taken in, loved? He had tried to fight fate, but no matter what he did, this path was set for all that he was. Konrad, the uncompromising, cruel Archon of justice, the Night Haunter, a symbol of terror and dread. He was still human. The loneliness, the torture, the pain.
That's the other thing. You're not human. You're superhuman. But, yeah.
And powerlessness to fate. It had all broken him. Konrad offered his life to Sanguinius to end it all here.
Which emo
One
boy is that?
last defiance of
We
fate.
know which emo boy this is.
His brother rushed forward, swinging down towards his neck. Konrad welcomed the release, welcomed the justice for the murderer he had become. But it never did. Sanguinius stopped. He wouldn't kill his brother. He told him that even he could find redemption. No, his freedom would not come. Fate had stayed the same. Konrad retreated, angry, ashamed, broken, mad.
Like, everything that, like, I've seen so far is Konrad chose this. Like, he tries to, like, deny it every single time, but he chose this.
Like a man possessed, Curze began to roam the world of Macragge, reaping the souls of the pathetic creatures that served in his hypocritical father's realm. The man, Konrad, raving about his father's injustices, and the creature, the Night Haunter, brutally killing and torturing, enjoying the power and self-righteousness from the kill. For weeks, Konrad plagued the forces of Imperium Secundus, stirring up the broken and forgotten people who dwelled in the slums of the world. Hated vagrants just like him. However, Lionel Johnson was able to corner his brother, and the Primarchs reenacted a duel they had fought a dozen times. Two of the greatest combatants, even amongst their brothers. The duels was a display of dizzying heights of martial prowess and strength. But finally, after years of hunting his brother, the lion defeated Konrad. But the sight of this poor, demented, and tormented thing captured the last of what was pity in his heart. Instead of death, the lion broke his brother's back over his knee. The wounded, mad Curze was brought into custody and put on trial before the Emperor of Imperium Secundus.
Boka is cutest wagon, I knew it all along.
Lionel Johnson and Sanguinius, Konrad freely admitted to all that he had done. It was a joke to put him on trial when he was simply a victim of his father's constructed fate. None of the guilt was his. And what good was there?
Like, he refuses to deny it every single time.
Judgment. he was still destined to die at his father's orders. The Mad King, disheveled and broken, alone on his throne. His judgment was given. Execution. But even as his brothers prepared to put down this mad monster, Konrad taunted them, even goading Sanguinius with his fate, the death they had both foreseen. A broken angel.
This video included the
murdered
part
by
of his
Horus,
story when he had a
his
nice little
once
chat with
closest
Vulcan.
brother.
Yeah.
All a path constructed by their father. The enraged Sanguinius lashed out, preparing to strike him down, decrying that this was not how he would die. It was not how it would all end. Moments away from a death unforeseen, the lion appeared, roaring for Sanguinius to stop. Troops came into the room, demanding the lion's surrender, but he responded that Curze's prescience had shown his death would be at the hands of an assassin sent by the Emperor.
Balls.
For Curze to die, his death would have to be ordered by their father, which meant for that future to come to pass, the Emperor and Terra still stood. There was hope yet. With the dissolvement of Imperium Secundus, the Ultramarines, Dark Angels, and Blood Angels raced towards Terra, hoping to break the massive warp storm that had isolated the capital since the early days of their heresy. The raving Konrad, locked within chains, laughed. Once again he had avoided death. His fate was still on track. He was vindicated.
Vindicated?
He was justified. The loyalists in their journey to break through the ruin storm.
Man, a peanut butter jar could fall on the ground and he'd be like, vindication! This man takes everything as vindication.
Followed the prescience of Sanguinius and Curze, the latter only revealing small pieces in rants between his deranged mutterings and apathy towards their cause. Arriving above the world of Davin, the Primarchs descended to the surface, Curze in tow as their prisoner. The further the group descended upon the world, the more Konrad began to panic. He had not foreseen this. All his life, he'd had the comfort of knowing what would happen next. But now he was utterly powerless. He was making decisions. The anger and sadness began.
So basically, he took the future visions and he literally did exactly what the future visions showed. And he thinks he didn't choose. No, you chose to follow the future you saw.
To build like a wave in his broken mind. Choice. He'd always had no choice. But each step he took towards the warp portal, located deep upon this strange world, was cracking his foundational belief. Arriving at the eerie temple, the brothers were in awe. The warp portal, the epicenter of where their father and Horus had entered that realm of madness. Caught off guard, the group was ambushed, and Sanguinius was swallowed up by the demon Medal's portal, the sight of which made Konrad shriek with concern and sorrow. Of all his brothers, Sanguinius had shown him kindness. Even though he was a monster, Sanguinius loved him, a feeling the all-too-human Konrad buried amongst the madness of the Night Haunter. Guilliman and the Lion began to scream at him, to use his prescience to see where Sanguinius was. But he couldn't. Konrad was panicking. He had seen none of these events, and it was breaking him, calling into question.
Why do I feel like... Correct me if I'm wrong. YouTube chat and Twitch chat. Was he just constantly trickled along by Zeech? That would explain a lot. Be able to see the future the whole time and then not be able to see the future when it actually mattered.
Everything he had done. Emerging out of the portal as demons erupted across Davin, Sanguinius dragged the fragile
dangerous.
Curze aboard his
Look
flagship.
at his cute! Go,
Gilliman and the
go!
Lion engaged the traitor forces that were blockading the path to Terra. They allowed Sanguinius and the Blood Angels the opportunity to defend Terra. Aboard his brother's flagship, Sanguinius decided again to bring his brother to Terra, placing Curze within a stasis coffin. As the brothers spoke for the last time, Sanguinius told Konrad that they would both face their destined path. Sanguinius had accepted his fate because he chose to. He was in control of his destiny, just as Konrad had had the choice too. Haunted, furious, and raving, Konrad screamed at his brother, trying desperately to hold on to the justification for it all, as Sanguinius cast his brother's sarcophagi into the void of space. A sense of pressure building before a storm pressed the air in the room to an uncomfortable thickness. From out of this rolled a thunder of words that Curze had yearned for, yet in the last sane pockets of his mind had never expected.
You are not weak, my son.
The voice drove Curze to his knees with its power. His head rang with sudden, white pain. A roaring hurricane of might blasted from the figure, now surrounded with anesthetic light, tossing the remains of his last victims around and burning out the wall, exposing Curze to the light of the hateful stars.
Father,
He said. His voice was fractured, small, a child's voice. Pitiful.
I am beyond your accusations, beyond speech, beyond anything. Why do you think that I speak? Your madness is finally complete.
Again the words rang Curze's skull, with the force of a clapper striking a bell. Still he managed to grin and raise his head to stare at the meaty thing's glory, that he was forced to squint against the blazing light.
no, no. You are here. I hear you. You have come to face my judgment drawn by this offering I have made. You were ever a bloody god.
I am no god, nor shall ever be.
Curze got back up, his feathered cloak whipping in the psychic gale, his book clutched protectively to his chest.
You are here. You understand your guilt. You have come to face my judgment.
You cannot condemn me. I am punished enough.
There is not enough punishment for what you have done. Not in this life or in the next.
Shouted Curze.
How dare you presume to understand what I have done, and what sacrifices I have made, and what I now must suffer.
The force of the voice battered Curze back.
You will never know the depths of my pain, for which I am grateful.
Curze opened his eyes to peer sidelong at the figure.
Why such hollow words?
The voice took a moment before it returned, again with thunderous force that made Curze howl.
No father wishes his sons to suffer, no matter what burdens he is forced to place upon them.
An apology! What next? You will forgive me. Sanguinius warned me you might.
He scoffed.
There was never anything to forgive. You acted as you were made to, but my plan was interfered with. Your insanity was not your fault, nor was it mine.
Curze snarled like an animal.
Lies. Everything was as you intended.
There is nothing you have done wrong. If only you and I could have met one more time, I could have shown you back to the light.
How marvelous!
Curze fell into a minute of wild, howling laughter.
I am the Night Haunter. Light is anathema to me.
Light is within you all. You are my sons. You are born of light. None of you are beyond redemption.
Tell that to those who died.
Nothing ever dies. Death is a state of transition. You have my forgiveness, Konrad, whether you want it or not.
Never!
The voice in his head would not relent, but pounded mercilessly on. More masonry fell from outside the wall. The floor collapsed behind him, frittering into constituent atoms.
You made but one mistake, my son. From it, all the evil you have perpetrated springs. You chose to believe in immutable fate. Without choice, there is nothing. These gods that taunt us rely upon choice. The functioning of this universe depends upon choice. A single fate is one book in a library of illimitable futures. You read only one. Do you not see that you chose this? You chose to be fate's prisoner. Had you believed in your
That's what I'm saying. Like, as someone that sees the future, like, you'd think Konrad understood that that was one future. Like, you could, if you do one thing different, that splits off into more futures, and you do another thing different, splits off into even more different futures. I'm sorry, but I feel like Konrad got the stupidity.
agency, none of this would have come to pass. You made this happen. You chose to be the way you are. Trapped, manipulated, insane.
Curze's smile froze, seeming to become detached from the face that it wore, hovering maniacally about his lips as a thing unique to itself, before it collapsed with all the violence of a dying star, and his mouth became a screaming hole.
No! You sent the assassins to kill me. You want me dead?
You determined what fate you trod. Your belief, my son, is nothing but an excuse for your own failings.
Wailing, Curze threw aside his book and hurled himself into the dreadful light, though it burned his eyes, and beat at the effigy, rending and tearing at it with broken black nails, peeling long curls of frozen flesh from the stitched carcasses, ripping it to bloody shreds. The light went out. Shaking, sobbing, he collapsed to the floor. The last remnant of his sculpture rolled wetly from the throne.
I cannot be forgiven.
He whispered. Tears coursed down his face, dripping from his nose and chin, insufficient in their profusion to dilute the blood spilled upon the floor.
After all I have done, where would be the justice in that? I had no choice. I had no choice!
The pressure dissipated. Curze hunched down to the floor and wrapped his arms around the ruin of his substituted father. Frozen in a half embrace, he waited for a voice that he would never hear again.
Well, like, going by chat's thing, as someone that sees the future, I feel like he should understand that the future is ever changing. Nothing's ever set in stone. You've just glimpsed a possible future. Or he misinterpreted that as, like, set in stone, which, like, still, like, that begs the question, like, how does he think he's vindicated?
My sons, the galaxy is burning. We all bear witness to a final truth. Our way is not the way of the Imperium. You have never stood in the Emperor's light, never worn the Imperial Eagle, and you never will. You shall stand in midnight clad, your claws forever red with the lifeblood of my father's failed empire, warring through the centuries as the talons of a murdered god. Rise, my sons, and take your wrath across the stars. In my name, in my memory, rise, my Night Lords. Konrad Curze, or the Night Haunter. It would be this pathetic, fractured thing that would awaken from the stasis coffin his brother had placed him in. Nearly 3 decades had passed. The rebellion was over. Sanguinius and Horus were dead, and his father laid crippled upon a throne of gold. A war that cost the lives of billions, a war that had destroyed worlds, fractured brotherhoods, families, and the Imperium had been changed forever. Eventually being discovered by a human salvage ship, Konrad reawakened, massacring the crew. The poor, innocent people aboard. They found this disheveled creature in human form. Some screamed. Some were frozen in place by the sheer dread, but all died at the Night Haunter's hands. Konrad was a husk, leaping from sprouts of rage, cruelty and torture to something that resembled more of a man. The Night Haunter and Konrad Curze, 2 aspects of one mad Primarch. With his freedom, Konrad made his way to the planet of Salgulsa, foreseeing his legion's arrival in his prescience. Like a puppet on strings, Konrad played out the part he had seen over a century ago, and prepared himself for the fated death that had once filled him with dread. He isolated himself, alone with his madness. He crafted a sculpture of flesh, made from the broken pieces of legionary slaves and servants. As the rotten, wet, disgusting thing was prodded and stitched, a twisted mockery of his father looked back at the filthy, mad, blood-soaked creature that was Konrad. He began to argue with it, swearing he could hear it speak. Oh, he hated him. His father, the arbiter of his fate, his architect for the state he was in. Look at him now, a broken corpse god, set on a path where he was to be worshipped as a god, just like he had planned. It was all his fault.
Yes, he would want to be a
Everything Konrad
corpse.
had done was because of him. He had no agency. He had none of the guilt for the billions who had died. Why him? Why was he chosen to land on Nostromo, growing up unloved and alone? Why did he have to become the Night Haunter, the arbiter of a brutal justice that he had allowed to continue for over a century in the Great Crusade?
Why does he look so
could he have
handsome?
not
Yeah,
been
he
in
did
his
look kind of
brother's
handsome in the pod,
place?
didn't he?
Such as Sanguinius and even Corax, 2 brothers cast from the same mold. But yet Corax's gifts were so much better. He haunted the night, but Corax owned it. Why did he make it so that he enjoyed the killing? Why did he make him this monster? Power and golden light began to emanate from the flesh effigy. Words pounded into Konrad, who in his broken mind he would never know if they were real or in his own head. He began to rage and condemn his father, blaming him for everything. But his father's words cut deeper than any wound ever could. You chose to believe in immutable fate. Without choice, there is nothing. Do you not see that you chose this? You chose to be fate's prisoner. Had you believed in your own agency, none of this would have come to pass. You made this happen. You chose to be the way you are. Trapped, manipulated, insane. The gods of chaos had ripped him from the Emperor's side, and the dark gods had toyed with Konrad, but he was not faultless. Those entities tried to poison him. They had shown him more possible futures when the Prescience took over, but it was Konrad who chose his fate. It was his fault. The words broke him as tears began to fall down his cheek. The boy with the knife on Nostromo, he had chosen to kill him. He had chosen to be the Night Haunter, and Dawn was right. The hatred planted in those you leave alive will pass from one generation to the next until worlds are engulfed in a war, the cause of which none of those fighting will remember. It would never end. His justice was a joke, and Sevatar was right too. How then did the other Primarchs manage to create compliant worlds? How has world upon world managed it, without resorting to butchering children and broadcasting their screams across the planetary voxnets? Even the events on Davin, where Konrad's prescience failed him, showing that fate was not set. It was all his choice, and the confoundment of it all was so great.
Like, I'm trying to understand Konrad, but like every time I go to try to understand him, I just get the same result, which is
that Konrad knew that to accept it, it would
Dude's
break
crazy.
the last string of sanity he had left. It is perhaps the most frightening thing in this world, what humanity does to protect itself. We will burn worlds to protect the fundamentals of who we are, and our ego, our self-righteousness. Shaking, sobbing, collapsed to the floor, Konrad picked himself up and prepared to face the destiny he knew in his heart he was the architect of. The Primarch strode to his throne room, passing the sons he hated so much, and in turn his sons looked at a father that didn't love them, a father who made them monsters and then judged them for it. He had become the very thing he condemned his father for, and in a spiteful act he ordered them to fight in an unending war. Sitting on his dark throne, a mad king welcomed the assassins sent for him. Laughing, crying, and cold, he welcomed the killer in. Raving with his broken mind, he spoke of vindication, and as his head was cleaved from his superhuman body, Curze escaped the guilt for all that he had done.
the peanut butter fell and he was like, vindication! Explain how I'm wrong. Explain how I'm wrong. So no, you go to the corner. Go to the corner. My God. Thorn video done already? What? I was going to say if he needs a hand. Wait a minute. He lost a hand, didn't he? Get in the corner! Get in the corner. Go in the corner till you think about what you did and said. Go to the corner.
Damn, Gold may have to make a house in the corner at this rate.
Yeah, probably.